So this is part 3 of Unit 4, the period of 1800 to 1848 of APUS history. This period is focused on the era of good feelings that came when Monroe became the president. He was nominated for president in 1816. He was a part of the Democratic Republican Party, and they won with a landslide. Monroe made a tour in 1817, which would increase nationalism, and the era of good feelings began. This is a period of lots of nationalism, one-party rule, and basically when you think about the era of good feelings, just think about Monroe's presidency, which lasted from 1817 to 1825. During this time, though, we do have a panic, the Panic of 1819. This was caused by speculation. The Bank of the U.S. tightened their credit and a bunch of loans were called in. Many state banks began to fail, and this can especially be seen in the West. So now we have the growth in the west of the U.S. The U.S. had 9 states that joined on top of the 13 original colonies between 1791 and 1819. There was a balance between free and slave states that was kept during this time. And so whenever one was brought in, another would have to be brought in to keep that balance between free and slave. The reason for a bunch of westward expansion was that there were less Native Americans, so there was less of a danger because of that. There was an increase in population, which can be seen because of a bunch of immigration. We also needed a lot more farmland because the colony land that was from the beginning kind of exhausted out all of its land because of the tobacco that was being grown and stuff like that. And there was also a lot more increase in transportation. So we have the creation of the steamboat, we have highways, we have canals that were created and stuff like that. So going to this new expansion, we have the Missouri Compromise. There were a lot of sectional tensions in 1819, and Missouri wanted to become a state, but this was a problem because they wanted to be a slave state. So we have the Talmadge Amendment, which said that no more slaves could be brought into Missouri. There would be a gradual emancipation of the kids of slaves in that area. But this caused an uproar of anger from the South. They saw it as a threat to their slavery, and they thought that it would eventually lead to them losing all of their slaves as well. This idea, though, was solved with a compromise. So we have Henry Clay. He created this compromise. Missouri would be created as a slave state, but in return, Maine would be separated from Massachusetts and would be a free state. At this time, Britain ruled Canada, so there was a little bit of problem in Oregon. So we have the Anglo-American Convention in 1818. America would share the Newfoundland fisheries with Canada, and there would be a 10-year joint occupation in Oregon. Now we move on to Florida. So America claimed Florida, and this was ratified in Congress in 1812. Most of Florida was still under the rule of Spain, but because there were some uprisings in South America, because a lot of those places wanted independence from Spain, America saw that as a great opportunity to then go and take Florida. So Andrew Jackson got permission to go and take Florida. But Jackson did overstep his instruction because he took the Native Americans that were in Florida and antagonized them so that they would come into the U.S. territory, and then he would use that as a reason to annex Florida. The Adams-Onis Treaty in 1819 was the Florida Treaty, and the U.S. would get Florida, Spain would get Texas, and Spain would also give up some of their Pacific Northwest claims. The last topic in this video is the Monroe Doctrine. So a lot of the people in Europe were against democracy, and the US saw this as a threat. All of these Latin American countries were getting their independence, and they were taking ideas of democracy, so this really was threatening the monarchical ideas that were used in Europe. So the Monroe Doctrine was created in 1823. This wasn't an actual act, it was more just a speech by Monroe that said that there would be no more colonization in the New World. And there was also a non-intervention idea that said that if you had left the New World already, you were not allowed to come back. And in return, the US said that they would stay out of European affairs. There were not that many short-term impacts, though, because the US had trouble enforcing it, but long-term, the US would become the dominant power in the Western Hemisphere. And we also have the RussoAmerican Treaty in 1824, which basically just had a fixed line that said that the present southern tip of Alaska at the Panhandle would be where Russia and the US's claims would stop.